Okay, awesome. So it's 5 in the morning here on Eastern Standard Time in the United States. Hello, everyone. I should say good morning to you guys. Excited to be here. Honored to be presenting at your ACE group in Nigeria. My name is Neil Mansola, and I'm a developer advocate at Atlassian. And I'm here to introduce you to the serverless app platform that we call Forge. I'm on a team that's called Developer Experience, and our team's mission is to unleash the power of developers in our ecosystem, helping to inspire, guide, educate, and support developers to build amazing apps and integrations on our platform, whether they're building for themselves, whether they're building for for their team, or perhaps they're even building for the marketplace, right? So this is talk, Forge in 60, is a quick introduction. We might do this in 40 minutes, is a quick introduction to the Forge platform. We're going to cover the benefits of the platform. I'm going to show some examples of things that you can build and even do some live demos to show you how easy it is to start building stuff on Forge. So what is Forge? Forge is our next generation platform for extending and customizing Atlassian products. There are significant advantages that Forge offers over previous app development frameworks. So if you're familiar with some of the older frameworks like P2 or a cloud one called Connect, you're going to see there's a nice big difference here between Forge and those. It was built with a developer experience in mind that simplifies app development, helps improve performance, enhances security, and just helps developers build apps that are very flexible, powerful, and deliver a great experience. So maybe you're not a developer and you're thinking, well, who uses this thing and why do they use it? And so let me start by saying that some of these groups aren't really distinct, but it's just kind of general buckets of users, people that are using Forge today. Of course, there are developers. After all, Forge is an app development platform. There's also like admins and power users that use Forge to build apps just for their organization. End users, we're seeing a lot of end users are starting to, they see how easy it is to get started building something out of the box, and end users are starting to use Forge to improve how they work with Atlassian products. Of course, we have partners, both solution partners and marketplace partners. More marketplace apps are being built on Forge than ever before. And Atlassian themselves, so myself and our team members, thousands of Forge apps have been built and used internally in Atlassian. And that's a really important thing because, when a company builds out a platform and it's kind of adopted internally, that bodes well for the platform in terms of the investment and iterating and making it better because we're using it ourselves internally. So on the Atlassian marketplace, you can find really great examples of essential power tools and built for customers, and some with great UI integrations and back-end automation features, and more being built on Forge. And we're going to highlight just a few of these later. In fact, wouldn't be a presentation without showcasing some numbers. There are more than 6,000 apps in the marketplace, and even there are even more obviously built in-house applications, probably in the tens of thousands, and we're seeing an increasing number of those that are being built on Forge. And the majority of our customers rely heavily on apps. In fact, over 70% of our Jira and Confluence Cloud customers use at least one marketplace app, but typically they use a lot of them. And when it comes to the importance of apps, don't take my word for it, the numbers kind of speak to this. In January of last year, 2023, the marketplace surpassed 3 billion in lifetime sales. It took 7 years to reach the first billion and only 2 years to reach the second billion. And in just a little over a year, we surpassed the 3 billion mark. And you'd think with numbers like this, 6,000 apps, billions in sales, that everything has already been built, that every use case has been addressed. But let me assure you that's not the case. I'm certain that as a user, you probably have several ideas and use cases that you'd love to see an app for. And when you dig into the origin story of some of those apps that are flourishing, like maybe on the marketplace, or maybe you or your team uses, you'll hear about how it started with an end user or an admin who built a little hack or a little script or an add-on just to make their job a little bit easier, something that solved their own little problem, and something to make their Jira or Confluence experience just work better for them. And that's what it comes down to. It's like solving a problem and delivering value. So depending on what your role is at your company, or perhaps even on your technical skills, you might be asking, well, why would I use it? Like, what kind of app would I build? And sometimes that inspiration for what to build starts with something very small, like an itch that you need to scratch. In fact, later on in this session, I'm going to build an app along, you can watch me build an app that fixes a pet peeve, a nitpick that I have with Jira Kanban boards. So onto the agenda. We're going to start with a very quick live coding demo of how easy it is to build your first Forge app. I'm going to introduce you to Forge and its benefits from a platform perspective. We're going to do a little more live demo coding that goes deeper than Hello World. And we're going to do some stuff around workflows. And then we're going to finish up with a peek under the hood with some Forge fundamentals. These are the next steps to get started and understand some of the core concepts. So what's the first thing you do when you want to learn a new language or a platform or a framework? You build a Hello World app. So Forge apps are built using JavaScript or TypeScript. We're going to create an app, test it, deploy it, and install it on my personal instance. So how long do you think you should take to stand up a Hello World app, deploy it to the cloud, and install it on a live Jira instance? A few days, a few hours? Well, it shouldn't just take us more than a few minutes to do this. So the steps we're going to do, I'm going to hop into a terminal. I'm going to type in some commands to create an app. I'm going to select a little template, deploy it into the cloud, and then install it on my site. So let's just hop into a terminal, and we'll do this live. All right. Is that font big enough? Can you see that okay?
Yes, sure.
All right, perfect. So I am in a folder called Forge. It's empty right now. I'm going to type in Forge create. Hello, Nigeria. And let's just choose UIKit, Jira, and Jira issue panel, something really simple. And what it's doing right now, so I'm using this thing called the Forge command line interface, or the Forge CLI. And this is how all Forge apps are born. Basically, you have to create them using this command, Forge create. And what it did there, it just created a little directory here called Hello Nigeria, the name of the app. And let's go into that thing. And it downloaded a template. And it contains some files here, like this thing called a manifest, the source code. And let me open up my editor here. I'll open up this folder so we can take a closer look. So this is kind of like what the anatomy of a Forge app. So we have this thing called manifest, which is kind of like the blueprint for your app. I'm going to dive into that later. And the source code. And it looks very simple. It's a little. It looks almost like a React app, and it's just going to print Hello World. So now I have this thing on my local computer. Let's head back to the terminal, and I'm just going to type in Forge deploy. Now what it's doing now, it's going to do some syntax checks to make sure there's no errors. Now it's going to package it all up, and it's going to put it into the Atlassian cloud. It might take a minute or so. So at this stage, it's not actually going to install it on my test instance quite yet. I have to do one other command after that. Just give this a moment. There we go. Now it says it's been deployed to the development environment. Awesome. So the next step we're going to do is Forge install. Now I'm logged into Forge under my account, so it knows kind of like which instances I have access to. Choose Jira and type in my URL. Excellent. Do I want to continue? Yes. And it says it's installed. So let's go take a look and see what the heck it just did. So we'll go to mansilla.atlassian.net. We'll head into this project. We'll open this up, and well, I have quite a few apps installed here. I need to uninstall. One moment. This would be an example. So if I could get the right one here. Hello Lansing. Way too many demo apps installed. So it kind of goes off of the menu here. But you can see what it did is that we added an issue panel right to the Jira issue view. And these are my other sample apps I was doing for some other ACE groups. But you can see like how simple it was to actually spin something up, and then our app just kind of shows up. If you want to see the apps that you have installed on your instance, go to apps, manage apps, and yeah, lesson learned. I need to clean some of these up because I have a whole bunch of them. I presented in Clone for many years in Nigeria app. Okay, great. So as you can see, like how easy that was to build a Hello World app. We did it in just minutes. And even though it's quite simple, it just shows kind of how quick the development loop is. Creating an app, deploying it, and then installing it. It's pretty instant. And even though that particular app really didn't do a whole lot, what it was really showcasing was that how easy it is to choose a template. Like I chose the issue panel UI kit template, which just shows like the different areas that you can, where your app can run within the UI. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the platform, the benefits of building on Forge at a very high level. And while I'm thrilled to introduce you to Forge, let's first talk about kind of where it came from and a little brief historical look back at our product and platform extensibility in general. So if you've been around the ecosystem for in the Atlassian ecosystem for a while, back in 2008, we introduced an app development framework called P2 or Plugins 2. Still used today for building apps for our on-premises products like Jira Data Center, Confluence Data Center, etc. And apps built on P2 are installed directly on your Jira or Confluence server, like even if it's behind the firewall. And it interfaces to the host product like Jira through APIs and an OSGI layer. In 2014, for our cloud-based products, we came up with a new framework called Connect, Atlassian Connect. And when you build an app on Connect, you host it on your own. Like you have to host it on some like hosting provider, like let's say Amazon EC2, and then or Heroku. And then through the Connect framework, you extend the Atlassian products like Jira Confluence by interacting through iframes, webhooks, and web APIs. So it's a traditional kind of web app infrastructure and like model layout. So when you're building it on a P2 app for server and DC, you could lean on the platform to handle storage, logging, and authentication because all that stuff was just done right there on the server itself. But when you were building an app in the cloud with Connect, you were responsible for not just building the app and maintaining it, but hosting it, right? Hosting it on hosting a full web application that was reliable, performant, and secure, and like hosted someplace else. And there are useful SDKs and libraries to help you get started. But ultimately, to run an app based on the Connect framework, you needed to be very competent in cloud architecture and ops if you really wanted to have a nice scalable app. And now we have the Atlassian Forge platform. It's our latest generation platform for extending and customizing Atlassian products. It became generally available back in 2021, and it offers significant advantages over Connect. With Forge, developers experience a simplified development experience, improved performance, enhanced security, and the ability to deliver a really seamless user experience. So let's break that down. Atlassian hosted. It means that when it runs on Atlassian, gone are those days of managing infrastructure, provisioning servers, worrying about how your app is going to scale. With Forge, you focus solely on writing code, building amazing functionality. The serverless nature of Forge ensures that you can effortlessly deploy your apps without the hassle of maintaining infrastructure, right? It just leaves you with more time and energy to innovate. And it's quick to get building, even for those that don't consider themselves software developers. We often refer to Forge as a low-code platform because it handles a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Forge helps you simplify development by doing things like managing authentication, right? You don't have to, you're not saving, API keys and authorization tokens. It helps simplify operations by handling scale and storage as well. And then lastly, Forge provides you with a whole bunch of like extension points and modules, and you have access to hundreds of APIs across our cloud products. You can build Forge apps for Jira, JSM, Confluence, Bitbucket, and Compass. So whether you want to build an app that sits within the user interface on the product, you want to build a backend integration with an external system, or you want to build a custom Jira workflow, Forge has got you covered. So as a result, Forge lets you focus more on innovation, right? Innovation for your apps, things that make your app unique, and worry less about that infrastructure aspect. So we've talked a little bit about the benefits of Forge, but what kind of things can you build? So theoretically, there are countless types of apps that you can build, and I'm going to bucket them though into 3 groups. You can add features and functionality within a product user interface, so building an app that sits within the UI. You can perform automation tasks, things that work, that operate in the background, things that are triggered by events that occur within the product. And then lastly, you can build an app that provides integrations with external platforms. So say something happens on your CRM and you want it to, fire off an event into your Forge app. You can do that with Forge. So the first type, the in-product, these are ones that are integrated directly in the product UI. An example would be an app that runs within Jira or Confluence product. So that, if you're a Jira user, that there are many different screens and views and projects for boards and issues, etc. Well, Forge provides the ability to smoothly and seamlessly integrate your app into many different screens and views within the product UI. And one example from the marketplace that I liked was dynamic forms for Jira by Divinity, right? It's a nice example of like rich UI features. It helps streamline data entry. Fields can be displayed based on conditions or past user behavior. It just provides like numerous templates for easy, that makes it easy for customers to get started. And it's really nicely fully integrated right into the Jira product user interface. You wouldn't even know that you're using a third-party app. The next kind of app is an automation. So these are ones that can provide complex workflow conditions, evaluate and inject data, or perform tasks that react to things that happen, either react to conditions or react to events. Or these apps could even run on predetermined schedules. One really simple one I like is AutoPage. And this automatically creates Confluence pages from Jira issues that are created. And it just helps customers keep their documentation in sync on Confluence. So the configuration is done on the Jira side, and dynamically it just generates these pages on Confluence like magic. And then third type that I mentioned were integrations. And so this is a Forge app that builds a bridge or a pipeline to an external product or platform. I mentioned maybe a CRM, but one of the most popular ones that's on the marketplace is the AWS Service Management Connector for Jira Service Management. And customers can make their AWS service catalog available in certain JSM projects. So within this app, customers can manage and provision AWS resources. They can provision them, update them, execute automation, and even terminate AWS resources to which they've been granted access, right from Jira Service Management, which is super cool. All right, so Forge, it goes beyond Jira. I mean, you can build apps across a range of products, as I mentioned. We have extensibility points that are very product specific, allow you to create enhanced experiences across, again, Jira Software, Jira Service Management, Jira Work Management, Bitbucket, Confluence, and Compass. So here's what we covered so far. You saw how easy it was to get started with Hello World. You can create a basic Forge app in just minutes, as we did with that Hello World demo. We've covered a bit of the history of our app development platforms and introduced you to the benefits of Forge. What I'd like to do next are some more coding demos, but perhaps we'll build a couple of apps that showcase a cool use case for Forge when it comes to workflows specifically. All right, so you guys know what these things are. Well, this is a default set of issue statuses that you get when you create a new software project in Jira Cloud. They represent the lifecycle stages that a bug or a user story has to pass through in order to get working code into the hands of customers. So these statuses just don't float out in space. They're linked together with transitions, which provide an orderly way for issues to progress from one state to another. Transitions are executed like when you drag an issue from one column to another on a Jira board, or if you update the issue status from the view issue screen. Well, this is a very simple workflow for software teams. Jira admins use workflows to model all sorts of different processes, from agile DevOps workflows to internal and external service desks to business processes like procurement or recruiting. And today, there are millions and millions of issues transitioned every day across Jira Cloud. So one of the really cool things about workflows, and particularly if you're admin, you work with, you're the one responsible for building out these workflows, is that they're extensible. You can customize them with a set of workflow modules that allow you to gate, to permit whether a transition can even occur or take an action after a transition is completed. So one of these modules is called the workflow condition. And the condition is a simple check that allows you to determine whether a user can even attempt to execute a transition. And there are several built-in conditions you probably know of, like the only assignee condition, where only an assignee can execute a transition. If you're not assigned that issue, you're not allowed to execute it. Or subtask blocking. It guards a transition from taking place unless the subtasks are in a particular status. So those are workflow conditions. Another type of workflow module we have is called the validator. And the validators are slightly more complex. They provide slightly more complex checks that validate a transition in real time as the user attempts to execute it. So a common use case is field validation, where a validator checks to see whether a field is set, validate its contents using comparative logic or a regular expression like pattern matching. And the other type of workflow module is called a post function. And post functions run async after an issue has transitioned into a new status. And you might use these to automatically assign an issue to a new user, update a field value, clear a value, copy a value, etc. So now I know maybe if you've been around working with Jira for a while, the workflow engine has been around for like 20 years. So I'm certain there are a lot of experienced folks who already know all about workflows. If the things I've covered so far feel old hat to you, I'm going to now talk about the exciting part. So what if I told you that you can build your very own custom conditions, validators, and post functions with just a few lines of JavaScript? And this is pretty exciting because it means you can build custom integrations to link your Jira workflows with other systems. You can write custom logic to validate that fields are filled out correctly, or that linked issues or attachments are in a good state before an issue transition. You can even integrate artificial intelligence, because I had to throw in artificial intelligence in this presentation. You can throw AI into your workflows to boost productivity. So at Atlassian, we take reliability very, very seriously. And we use Jira, Opsgenie, Status Page for incident management. And we have a sophisticated workflow that manages paging, escalations, comms, post-incident reviews, etc. Today, we're going to customize a very simplified DevOps incident workflow. This workflow has two states. When an incident is detected, an issue is created in the open state. And once we've restored service, the issue is transitioned into the resolved state. So it's overly simplified for this demo. And for the first app, we're going to build the most critical part of any incident workflow. We're going to create a post function that suggests a cocktail for the incident manager to enjoy after a stressful incident has been resolved. So the higher severity of the incident tends to be more stressful. We're going to use the severity level of the incident to determine how strong that cocktail should be. So we're going to jump over to the command line and start building our first Forge app. So again, we're going to do Forge create. Let's give it a name, Jira cocktail suggester. And let's see, we're going to have Jira. We're going to choose the Jira workflow post function. And now, again, creating the app. So if we go into that folder, open up our editor. Okay, you can use that in any editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code. So again, we're going to take a look. Every app has its manifest. We're going to kind of dig into what that is, kind of like the blueprint for our app. Okay, let's give this thing a better description. Suggest a cocktail based on incident severity. Awesome. And just a little bit of add a couple of things here. We're going to change the runtime. You could ignore this for now, but we have to add the new runtime because it'll be faster for this demo. All right. Look at the source. So right now the source code is pretty basic. It just kind of, for this template, it just kind of sending something to the console log. We're going to be coding in JavaScript. So let's write some placeholder comments of what we want our app to do. So first, what we want to do is we're going to be suggesting a cocktail based on severity. First, we want to look up the issue priority or the severity of the issue. So we want to determine the priority. Next, we want to do is suggest a cocktail based on the priority. And finally, we want to post a comment on the issue. with our cocktail suggestion. Excellent. All right, so we're gonna do all these things that we just commented out in our code. So we're gonna head over to the documentation. And this is gonna help guide us to see what kind of code we need to write in order to make this thing happen. So we're gonna head down to the comments and we're gonna see like, hey, how do we add a comment? So let's look at that first. So we went to the add comment section of our documentation, and on the right hand side you can see a whole bunch of like sample code. So we're going to do a whole lot of copy pasting here. So I'm a developer and I still love to copy and paste. So let's take this line 3, and what we're going to do is we're going to import this library that allows us to make API calls. So allow our app to actually make calls to the Jira REST API, and I'm going to install the dependence, the library for that as well. This seems really confusing to you. Don't worry about it. You'll see when it all comes together. We're also going to copy paste this sample code on how to add a comment. So let's go from top to bottom here. Let's copy that. Awesome. We'll paste that right here at the third part. Okay. Yeah, we're going to do some cleanup here. Like right now, that sample code says visibility is only for administrators. Let's get rid of that. And we had some like lorem ipsum text here. Let's put in put a message here that makes the cocktail suggestion. So, hey, nice work. You deserve we'll put a variable in here, a cocktail. All right. So let's just create the cocktail variable up here, and we'll make it static for now. Let's just suggest something like let's say like a martini. Let's do like some initial testing. So we're going to change some syntax here. Make this asynchronous. We're going to call the app, call the API as the app, not the user, because we want the app to actually be posting the message, the comment. And then we got to change this by just adding the little $sign there and get the issue key. We want to make sure we're posting the comment on the right issue. Okay. What else we need to do? All right, so we're going to deploy this thing. Actually, wait a second. Before we deploy it, we just added a new API, which was the added comment, and we need to add a scope or a permission to our app. So that would be right here, write Jira work. So back to the documentation, we'll copy that. Let's go back into our manifest, and let's add that permission. So that our app was able to read, now it can write to Jira. We could read issues before, now we can actually write stuff like make a comment. So now, just like our hello world, we're going to do deploy, and it's going to package it all up. All right, and now we're going to install this. We'll put this on one of our team's dev instances. It's going to just ask you, hey, do you sure you want to install this with these permissions? And we're going to say yes. Head over to our test instance here, and we have to add this. We have to add this workflow now. Okay, so it's a simple workflow of just like open and resolved. See this right here. So we're going to click on one of the transitions, and we're going to add this post function. And we should see the app that we just deployed and installed, which is, let's see, add post function. And it's there, right there at the bottom, Forge Cocktail Suggester. Awesome, so we're gonna add that. Now we just added that. That was the thing that we just built in Forge. So a little different from our hello world, right? We're doing a workflow thing. So Forge is very flexible, do different kinds of things. So there we go. And if we publish that, let's go and transition an incident. our coffee maker that's broken. We're gonna move it to resolved, and hopefully this will work. We should see, ta-da! Yes, nice work. You deserve a martini. Way to go. So again, just kind of testing this out to make sure that what our code works so far. So let's see what else we need to do in our code here. So we got the posting comment part. Let's work backwards. Now let's determine how do we get the issue priority? Because right now it's suggesting a martini every time, right? So we're going to head back to the docs and find the API that we need for fetching the issue. So let's go to issues, get issue. And by the way, I'm on developer.atlassian.com. If you've never been there, this is where we host all of our developer and API documentation. So here we go, get issue. So similarly, we're going to copy and paste some code here. We don't need to get line 3 because we already imported that. So copy that and paste. So as developers, we kind of like laugh at copying and pasting, but honestly, we always end up doing a lot of it. So let's do some cleanup in here. Yeah, we have a variable that we kind of declared twice. Let's get rid of that. Kill that console log. We know that that's working fine. And so again, we got to get the issue priority. Let's see what else we can do. Okay, we had to add the right issue key. We're going to call this as the app. All right, and then that's a scope that we need. I think we already have that in our manifest. You read Jira work, so we don't need to add that. So perfect. And so let's, I think we're ready to deploy this thing. Oh, we're going to let's use our tunnel so you can actually see it live. Okay, here we go. So it's going to do some syntax checking. And now with a tunnel, we can do some iterative development and testing and debugging without having to deploy it. It's a lot faster. So watch this. We're gonna transition the incident from open to resolved again, and it should still post the same comment, only a martini. Okay, good. That's still working. But what we're looking for is this. So I'm back at the my command line, and we want to see like what came back. So we're running this tunnel. We can see the kind of the console output, and we want to find the severity. Now this is we got the issue using the get issue, and it's right there. It's under priority name. Okay, awesome. So we know where we can find that. So let's pull that out. So we're going to take that JSON response, put it in a variable. Let's save the priority. So issue.fields.priority.name. Okay. And now let's kind of create a little map of the different cocktails based on severity. But we need to find out what are the priorities here. We have high, medium, low, and this is bad. So this project has those 4. So we need to have one for all of those. So for low, we'll go with something kind of weak, like a shandy. It's a medium severity, a rum and coke. High severity, I think we can stick with a martini. And then if this is bad, we'll go with one of my favorites, even though I don't drink a whole lot, a Long Island iced tea. Excellent. Okay, so now that we have that, we got to add the priority here. Lovely. So now it's not just going to be martini; it's going to be based on the severity. So let's change our priority of this issue to this is bad. And what we're going to do now is transition it to resolved. And we should see an appropriate cocktail. Not a martini, not a martini. What is it? Long Island iced tea. There it is. So it works. Yay. Okay. So we can stop this tunnel from running now and we can deploy this. So great. So right now, once we deploy it, our app is running, and now this app could be installed on production instances everywhere. And you can we can add our, our Forge app to an actual incident management workflow, and it will suggest cocktails based on severity. And we built it from scratch. It took 9-10 minutes to do this thing, which is awesome. All right, let's head back. All right, so cocktails, a bit of a silly example, right? But I hope it demonstrates how easy it is to get started writing real workflow extensions with Forge. And there are plenty of real world, DevOps use cases for post functions. You could use it to page your team based on the value of a field, use the issue severity to automatically escalate an issue instead of recommending a drink. You can use post functions to make calls to external APIs. So you can automatically post updates on status page, Slack, or even send out an email. Saves time for your incident team. You can use post functions to synchronize issue data with other systems, so you don't have to copy. So if you want to copy issue comments into a post-incident review on Confluence, or replicate an issue into CRMs or other trackers, you can do that with some middleware. Have Forge do it for you. In many cases, Forge it's a really good replacement for using webhooks or scripting with API tokens, because the data processing is all done on Atlassian Cloud, rather than having to egress or share that data with some kind of external system to do the processing. All right, so we're going to build just one more app, a second app, and it's going to do something a little more useful. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the inspiration for apps comes from scratching your own itch or solving your own little problem. And we're going to use Forge to fix a bit of a pet peeve or a problem that I have with Jira software. So for those of you that practice Agile, you may have experimented with some Kanban boards on Jira. And some of you might be using work in progress limits to improve workflow throughput. If you're not familiar with work in progress, it's a feature on Jira boards that lets you set a maximum number of issues that can be in a particular state. And this is supposed to encourage team members to complete work before they pick up new tasks, right? So now the reason this is a pet peeve for me is that the work in progress limit in Jira simply turns the column red. As you can see here in the in progress column, it just changes the color of the column from black to red. And it's pretty easy for team members to simply ignore that, right? Notice there are 4 in progress, even though we set a maximum of 3. And the red is supposed to really keep people from picking up more work. So we're going to build a workflow extension to actually enforce work in progress limits, right? This time we're going to use a simple Kanban software workflow with 4 statuses. So we're going to build a validator module that's going to ensure that a maximum of 3 issues can be in the in progress state at any one time. And so validators, they execute in real time. So when you attempt to transition something into transition an issue, we're going to be binding our validator to the in progress transition. So let's jump back over to the command line. So maybe we see some code. Save time. We're just going to keep on using the cocktail suggester app. We're just going to add the Forge module for workflow validators. So let's head over to the documentation and jump into the Forge docs and look for the validator module so we can learn a little bit more about it, its syntax, etc. Okay. So modules, Jira, and go down to the very bottom of this list. There is the Jira workflow validator. So here you can learn a little bit about what it does. For the interest of time, we're just going to hop right into the code. We're going to copy and paste some things that we need to add to our manifest. So we're going to add this module to our manifest. So we'll just copy. Okay, and paste it here. Awesome. So this, again, blueprint for our app. It says what modules we need. Let's do some cleanup here. And kind of map it to where in my source code do I want to execute code. So let's just give this a better key name, better just name and description, work in progress validator. That's what will show up in our workflow tool. This validator will block if there is too much work in progress. All right. So some cleanup here too. We have some duplicate stuff. We got from our last copy paste. There we go. Index. Okay. Let's go over to the index file and we're going to copy and paste some code example code from the doc. So down below here is the actual JavaScript code. We're going to paste that right here. Make that async. Okay. And okay, we're gonna make our syntax consistent, and we're gonna force a false condition just for testing. And let's just put a little silly message in here. Hey, no starting work after drinks. Again, what we're doing here, the interface for this module is a little bit different. If how it works, that the validate function returns an object with the result property, and if it's false, it's going to block the transition from occurring and then send an error message. So we just want to see this thing and just kind of validate that it works. So let's deploy this thing. We have to deploy, you can't just use tunnel because we made changes to the manifest. And let's give this a try. Let's head over to a Kanban board, different project. And you see that work in progress there. And so we're going to block every single one. It should block. Oh, why didn't it block? Oh, probably we haven't added it to our workflows yet. 1 second. Let's go to our workflows and go into the mob. Okay. So we're going to edit mode here and select the progress transition, and then there we go. We're going to add the validator that we just created. There it is, a work in progress validator. We just added that forge app, and add that. Publish it. No backups. We live dangerously. And let's try that again. So it should block every single attempt, even if it's less than 3. Perfect. Look at that. No starting work after drink cocktails. Lovely. So we know that it works, and we understand the interface more. So let's go back to the code, and let's determine how many issues are in progress. So how are we going to do that? We have to go to the docs and only allow the transition if there are less than 3 issues in progress. Awesome. So again, kind of put some comments, placeholders. So let's determine how many are in there. Let's go back to the docs. And issue search, we're going to use good old JQL. And again, copy paste. Here's how you do a search for an issue. We'll paste that into our code right here. And again, do some little cleanup. We'll make the API call app as the app. And obviously we need to add our own JQL in there, our own query. So we'll create a variable called JQL. And let's create it here. And so we want to say the project is is mob, and status is in progress. Okay, so that's going to search for all issues in the project mob that are in progress. And let's tunnel this thing and take a look. So again, we haven't added any logic to it. We're just making an API call. We want to see what that API response looks like. So let's just transition one over. And okay, should still block it. But really what we want to go back to is our command line, and let's take a look and see what does this look like. And lo and behold, there's this nice little field there called total, and that's what we're going to use from the API response. Okay. And that's going to help us determine whether or not there's too many things in flight. So let's add some logic. So results.total less than 3. And let's change that silly message to too much work in progress. Please finish your current tasks before picking up more work. Awesome. Okay, so logic is in place. We have made the API call. Let's Tunnel's updated. Let's go try. And so we drag one over, and that should be allowed. If we drag a fourth over, it should be blocked. Hold on a second. Boom, there it is. Hey, too much work in progress. Please finish your current tasks. So lovely. It worked great. So we're going to stop our tunnel, and we can just deploy this again. Once we deploy this, now this is like live on our instance, and we are good to go. All right, let's hop back on the presentation here. Okay. So that was just one example use case, but there's a whole different things that you can do with validators in Forge. You can check that all fields have been filled out correctly, or that linked issues and subtasks and attachments are in an appropriate state before it can proceed. From an integration standpoint, you can also call out to remote APIs. So you can validate that deployments have completed, or feature flags have been set, documents have been signed before a transition can occur. You can do that all dynamically when a user attempts to transition, and you can prevent it from occurring. Another really cool use case is building dynamic compliance logic. So you can ensure that only particular people or roles can perform a transition, or ensure that transitions can only occur during business hours or not during a code freeze or a public holiday. You can also check that a manager has left a comment with their approval before a transition is allowed. Anything you can think of, right? So custom validators are very versatile and a valuable tool in any Jira administrator's toolbox. Okay. So to recap, we talked about who uses Forge and why, touched a bit about the history of it. And we talked about some of the benefits of building on Forge and how it is, we consider it one of our best app development platform to date. And then we jumped directly into code from Hello World and a couple workflow sample apps to show you kind of how easy it is to get started. Both, from a UI perspective, there's tons of different places you can place your app, or if you're doing kind of some workflow or backend stuff, like Forge really is quite flexible. So we're going to talk about some of the fundamentals of Forge, shed some light on some things I might have quickly breezed over. If you're not familiar with Forge at all, you might have been thinking, what the heck is on my screen? I'm going to dive into that a little bit, and even some of the terminology might not be familiar. That's okay. This is intended to kind of give you a peek under the hood, so you can kind of see what makes up a Forge app. All right. So let's start first with that CLI, the command line interface. So what is it? It's the command line interface for building and deploying Forge apps. So every single Forge app begins with Forge create, right? And you can use this whether you're on a PC, Mac, or Linux, same tool, the primary tool you're going to use to create and deploy your apps. And the CLI is intended to be very simple to use with commands like Forge create, Forge install. You saw me type those things in, but it also has a lot of other power and capabilities. And you can find those simply by just typing Forge enter, and you'll see like all of the different things that it can do. And you can learn more about it by just going to checking out the docs, or I put a little convenience URL down there at the bottom. So that's the CLI. The next fundamental part of Forge that we're going to talk about are modules, and we use them already. I did the Jira issue panel UI module on Hello World. We used a couple different workflow modules in the last two demo apps. And you can think of modules as the building blocks for your app. So modules describe how Forge apps extend and interact with Atlassian products. They define what your app is capable of doing inside of an Atlassian product like Jira or Confluence. So whatever module your app needs that you might find in the documentation, there's a huge list of them. You simply have to add it to your app's manifest, and we're going to talk about in a second. So in the Hello World app, we use Jira issue panel. There's another, just jumping around here. We use a Jira workflow validator, right? So there's 3 workflow modules you can use, and we use 2 of those. You can use Jira expressions, which require no code at all. You put the Jira expression right inside your manifest. So modules, as I mentioned, aren't just for UI. You saw the workflow ones, but there's other cool modules. Like there's one called the product trigger module, or it's triggers, and they're useful for automation. So there's product triggers. So let's say an issue is updated. You'd like to have your app do something when someone makes a change to an issue, or adds a comment to an issue, etc. So a product trigger would take care of that. So a function in your app will be invoked or run when a specific event is fired. So if you're familiar with webhooks, or if you've ever used the automation tool within the UI, very similar. Like when certain events happen, you can actually now you can fire a function within your Forge app. You just have to define this in the manifest. And there's a wide variety of product events, issues being created, issues being updated, comments being made, custom values being set, etc. Like anything you can think of, there's probably a product event that you can trigger a function within your Forge app. So another type of trigger is a scheduled trigger. So if you're a developer, this is kind of like a cron job, right? You can repeatedly have the function or part of your Forge app invoke at specific intervals, hourly, daily, or weekly. So why would you use this? Maybe you need to generate reports without a user needing to request them through the UI. You just want to schedule this. This is when it can come in really handy. And lastly, for integrations, the web trigger is awesome because you can essentially create a URL that can be reached by an external system to trigger. And if an event happens externally and you want your Forge app to fire, you'd use a web trigger. So classic service to service scenario, right? External service contacting your Jira instance through your Forge app. Okay, so the issue panel, project page, and the workflow stuff are just a few of many modules that are available. You can see all of this inside the documentation on developer.atlassian.com. And again, there are modules exist just that are related to user interface. There are common modules, product-specific modules, and you can find them all here in the docs. You simply have to add them to your manifest. So permissions, you saw that I had to add like write permissions. And so permissions control what your app's access to resources. And these are the things that are presented to the admin when they install your Forge app. It's going to say, hey, are you sure you want this app to be able to write or to read these things, right? So there are several types of permissions that you can request. The first is called product scopes. And we saw that I added, read Jira work or write Jira work. You just have to define those in your manifest. I'm going to kind of skip through some of these because these are a little bit more. Maybe I won't just skip over this one because this is getting quite popular these days in terms of external permissions. So if you wanted to do some kind of integration with an external platform, let's say some kind of AI LLM platform, you can actually say that, hey, look at this bottom black box. I want my Forge app to be able to make API calls externally, right? This is where you would define that. If you don't define it here, it won't be able to do it. All right, let's hop over to the manifest. So that manifest, like I said, it's the blueprint for your app. So it's just a text file that describes the structure of your app, including the modules your app uses and the permissions that are required for each of those. So it's a pretty simple looking document, but it's very, very critical. It's like it is, again, something that defines basically the capabilities of what your app can do within the Atlassian products. And it looks something like this. You can, if you Forge create any kind of those templates, you'll get a manifest, and you'll see like the list of modules, permissions, etc. Environments. So Forge when you create an app, it automatically creates like 3 environments for you: development, staging, and production. This is great for like if you utilize CI/CD practices, continuous integration, continuous deployment, allow your team to iterate, test, and deploy new features. We only use development in our demos, but yeah, it's a really nice, convenient thing to have built into Forge. And then I'm going to skip over this, but environment variables. So if you are in the, if you have like need to store like API keys or other kinds of credentials related to the different deployment stages, you can use environment variables. So they're isolated variables, key value pairs based on the environment. A little advanced, but again, using this Forge CLI, it's super simple to set these values. Let's see, deployments. So we were deploying only to development, but if you want to deploy to production, it's basically -E space production, and boom, it gets it's that easy to switch to different environments. So dev loop is pretty simple, right? You saw me do it live with create, deploy, redeployed a couple times, and then finally to install. So again, fundamentals we just covered were the CLI, what modules are, what permissions are, the manifest, environments, and deployments. A lot of stuff to take in, particularly if you're not a developer, but maybe as you start kind of going further on your journey of figuring things out, this stuff will start clicking later. 82% of marketplace apps built on Forge were built and launched in 3 months or less. And that is really something, because that just goes to show you like how I don't want to say how low code it is, but just like a lot of the friction and barriers to entry and completion have been taken care of. And so this, when a company or a developer just has to focus on the innovation part, it can really accelerate their development time. So you're thinking, hey, how can I get started, right? We've created an abundant amount of easy to follow tutorials, videos, even. That URL there will bring you to a page with tutorials, example apps, reference docs, and then we have our developer blog as well, where we talk about cool use cases and cool things that are happening on the platform. So whether you're an end user, an admin, or an app developer, I really encourage you to check out Forge, learn how you can leverage the platform to build something truly amazing, but really just something useful for you to start with, maybe your team. And of course, if you have aspirations, get that thing in the marketplace, even better. These URLs, again, that bottom one's a really cool one. It's a bunch of YouTube videos full of 5-minute snippets that kind of do some dives into different parts of the Forge platform. And so it can make it a lot more easy to grok and understand if you're not a developer. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being able to present to you, and open to any kind of questions you might have.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I think so. There's something I'll see me too after now. So, but just a contribution. Initially, when I first looked at the Forge platform, I was imagining how it's going to work. I didn't know it was going to be this easy. Like I wanted to ask, one thing someone will ask is what language do you need? But I can see that almost everything comes from API documentation, so that makes it very, very easier for someone to follow. Because I was wondering, like in my company, we use Python. Other people might, initially I was thinking it was an SDK or something to make it common for everybody. But watching it now, I think I actually get it better. Like, and to also add, I think it's going to be very useful for our own internal work. Like I know, we always have this fight with PMs of your tickets, this and that. I've already imagined a use case we are going to use it. So I think it's something really, I would say it's something that maybe a lot of us on our rates, we don't really know the far. Of course, how easily, when you make your internal tools work for you, it's easy for you to do something on a large scale and show an app is okay, you can try this app and it works. For me personally,
yeah, we see a lot of people that have built things that are particularly our enterprise and on-prem customers that have built over the years. They built a lot of scripts and did a lot of things just like making API calls to do little tasks. I mean, you can do those things with Forge really easily, and then they're easy to maintain, right? Like you can have it. They're not going to be tucked away someplace. It's an app that you can create and collaborate on with your teammates and manage it. You can, if you go to the developer console, you can actually see like all the different places where your app is installed. You can take a look at logs, both development and production logs. It's really awesome. I think from an administrator's and end user standpoint, it's very, very powerful. Not to mention, obviously, building a full-on app that you might find on Marketplace. Even the small stuff, I think, is super, super important. And I think it's a skill that people should pick up, right? You don't have to be a super senior software developer. You just have to have a problem that you want to solve.
Yes, that's right. Great. So
Awesome.
thank you so much, Neil. I'm really grateful for your wasting time. I know this is a very busy period. Cutting 24 by the corner, and everybody is, I know that is what is happening. I'm grateful that you have this opportunity to come and share with us. And I think this is not be the last time, because for me, this is just an eye opener.
Awesome.
So I think I can stop recording now, and then I will share it with those who registered and the rest.
Right on. Cool.